I just can't wait, folks. I can't wait for the timer to go all the way down. We're here with Seth Weathers. We're talking about culture. We're talking about apparel and clothing. And I did an episode on my podcast recently with Tanner Guzzi about how to go and change how you think by wearing your clothing and how you present yourself to the world. Tanner has his book, The Appearance of Power. We talked all about these shirts, where I got these shirts made from, the kind of jeans I wear, all those stories around clothing. So we're talking today with Seth, who has a company where he's making changes in culture by using clothing. And Seth, what's that lovely shirt you're wearing?
Let's Go Brandon has become this is a point in culture that's going to be remembered. It's kind of like you hear phrases from political campaigns from many years ago, Tippy Canoe and Tyler too. Let's Go Brandon will be the 2001 version of it. It's something that's it's not going away. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's for folks who don't know the Let's Go Brandon story. There was pretty recently, there was a reporter interviewing just some race car driver at a track, and the audience was shouting F Joe Biden, and the reporter, just attempting to perhaps have less profanity on television or maybe politically organized, who knows, said, "Oh yeah, let's go Brandon." And then now at this moment, at least as of last night, 5 out of the top 5 hip hop songs on iTunes in the US are all variations of Let's Go Brandon. And I think it's 4 out of the top 10 iTunes songs in the US are Let's Go Brandon. My Dear Ed Sheeran is number 7, Adele's number 3, because Let's Go Brandon, that cultural thing, has just been a way to express and to really connect with people. And so I want to hear, Seth, you have this particular shirt, but it's not like you just started off with this one shirt. Can you tell us more about your company and more about your idea of how we're going to change culture, not just by talking about stuff, but by actually what we choose to put on our bodies?
Yeah, so I've been a political consultant for years, so I've worked in the business. So I've spent a lot of time running campaigns and helping get people elected, and typically working with outsider candidates that were oftentimes underfunded, and the little guy against the big guy, kind of David versus Goliath story. And I've always enjoyed that. And then about 2 years ago, I, more on a whim, it kind of threw up some stuff that was pro-Trump type stuff. And just as kind of a side thing, it kind of developed into the business that it's become now, which is Bring Ammo. And what we're trying to do with our company is, like, we're certainly having fun. These shirts, we're having fun, and, we have more serious items as well, all conservative bent and patriotic. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to embolden other conservatives. There's a lot of conservatives out there that are just scared to death to admit they're conservative. And I experience it all the time, even just wearing these kind of shirts out in public, whether it's the grocery store or whatever it is. People come up and be like, "Hey, yeah, I really agree with you." I'm like, "You're in Metro Atlanta, dude. Why are you so nervous?" And the thing is, they're just, because you turn on the television, you go to any, you deal with your local schools, whatever it may be. For the most part, these are highly run by Democrats and oftentimes very much on the left side of things. And so people just become, they believe that there's way more of the others than themselves, which is part of the goal of media and how they do these things. And so it's just letting people know, hey, you can stand up and say what you believe and be public about it. Hell, they do. They're putting kids and girls, guys and girls restrooms in public schools, and you're afraid to fucking offend someone. They don't have that same fear for you. Like, it's time to fight back a little bit and show that you don't. And I think that emboldening these people will make them get out and vote more, remind them that they need to do that, and also let them know you're not alone. And if we all banded together, there are more of us than them.
I'm going to broaden what you're saying a little bit to not just people who like Trump, but anyone who dissents from the mainstream narrative at all. That if you think that maybe it should be, and not maybe, but it should definitely be up to you to make healthcare decisions for your children, and that actually parents have the best, or even for yourself, do you think that no one should be fired because they work from home and aren't getting a drug that their company says you have to get? Like, you don't have to be a Trump fan to go think that not putting a drug in your body is okay. But it's a controversial thing, right? It's the most recent attack in my town, Olympia, which is halfway between Seattle and Portland. The most recent Antifa attack that shot a guy was a couple months ago, and it was at the transit center just downtown here. Olympia is a small town, but we're having blood in the streets last month because we're not coming out and saying that violence is bad, right? And it's one thing to say, well, political violence is bad. I had this conversation with someone in town here, a guy I know somewhat well, and I said, we were talking about different ideologies, and we happened to be at a march where Antifa was blocking a road so no one could get through town. And I was asking him about some of the things they're supporting, and he's like, well, I think they're really great. And I said, okay, so how can we police, how can you, because it's his team, right? How can you police these people? That, yeah, right now it's a peaceful march through town. There's children. It's nice and wonderful. It's an American democratic protest thing. But you know that tonight these people will be breaking windows and maybe lighting buildings on fire. And he's like, oh, I don't agree with that. Well, okay, great, of course, because we're buddies. Of course you don't. You're not a violent person in that way. But he didn't have an answer, and he sort of had a befuddled look on his face. He didn't have an answer for, what are you going to do to police that side of yourself? And this is where this idea of the cultural speaking out, even in small ways, like wearing a Let's Go Brandon shirt, and just making it aware that you're saying, I don't like political violence. Your shirt could as well say political violence is dumb.
Yeah.
You're using a more cultural of the moment thing, right? But the idea that political violence is a bad answer. Firing people because they disagree with you is a bad answer to having a healthier public. And just vibrating, even thinking about, what if people just wore shirts that say violence is stupid, or only losers burn down buildings because they disagree with people.
I kind of
what if we all wore those shirts around Olympia? Maybe the idiots would stop burning down buildings because they'd say, oh, well, maybe
no, you would probably get shot or stabbed, but that might lead to the final crackdown that does make those things stop happening. So if you want to be the guinea pig, we can talk after the show.
It's been an interesting time in Olympia here. I had a buddy call me or text me. This was last summer. He said, are you in the hospital? I said, no. And he said, oh, okay, because I saw a guy who looked like you, and I saw him, blood pouring everywhere on TV. And it's because a guy who looks like me was downtown where Antifa BLM was blocking off 3 sides of a road, and people were trying to escape the blockade. And some people on foot were trying to go help these cars escape. And so Antifa started beating the crap out of them, blood everywhere. And it happened to be a redheaded guy with a beard. And my buddy thought, oh no, it's Brian down there. Oh no.
Well, where are the police?
Our police have been forced to stand down by the city council.
I know that. I'm aware I'm answering a question I know the answer to, but I'm making a point with that is when that type of, look, if you and I were to go out in the street, get all dressed up, wear some thug gear, black out all our clothes and all this, and start just causing riots in Atlanta over stupid shit right now, we would be in jail so fast. It wouldn't have time for the news to get there to cover it. But these guys on the other side are allowed to get away with murder. And I don't say that, I say that literally. They've been getting away with murder. And so for that to continue, you get to a point where, when the police are the ones allowing the anarchy to take place, you're in a difficult situation, especially in a blue state like yourself.
Yeah, it's a cultural problem, right? I was at the same march going through town, and I stopped. It was one of the cops was guiding traffic away from where the marchers had blocked the street. And I asked him, this was 2020, summer 2020. I asked him, there's only one street that goes through this part of town, so you really can't easily get downtown. And I said, well, how can we citizens stop this? This is not okay. And he said, what we're allowed to say is that elections matter. Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, but I can't control who ends up being on the council, but I can control what I wear. And it's this idea. So there's no Trump flags in our area. Okay, go for it.
Well, I was gonna say that's part of what we're trying to do with encouraging people with these messages is it's reminding them, okay, it's okay to be strongly conservative. It's okay to be the guy that says, hey, those guys blocking streets and starting fires and all this, they need to be in jail. Okay. That's just the way it works. They need to be in jail. That's my stance on it. Talk to me about your democracy. And that's great. It's not democracy stopping me from getting to work, burning buildings and beating up me or my car, whatever it may be. And so I think when we're out there doing that, we're encouraging people to, it does ultimately come back to those elections and maybe waking some people up as their cars are getting burned or whatever's happening downtown that, hey, it's time to get out. Maybe we should care about who we're voting for. And maybe we should make some better decisions at the ballot box.
But voting also only happens occasionally, and it regularly doesn't matter. My vote, I put my fiance's vote into the ballot box at City Hall in 2020, and the state says I never voted because it doesn't exist, of course. But my own ballot, Thurston County website says Brian Keith never voted because someone is magically disappearing votes.
Now that's another problem in itself. Yeah,
it is. But my point being that you can't, like, that may or may not solve things. But when I see someone going through town, and it was just shocking to see actual people with any kind of Trump anything on, because I thought, well, if you do that, you might just get killed. Like, it's a very literal thing. Like, people are being assassinated in my area. Someone was down in Portland was murdered. Another person had a car run over them. But that's not a theoretical threat. But when I see it, I go, oh, courage. It's a freaking politician's flag. Why are we attaching our ideals to a person? That's madness. Yeah. But it gives some of us the guts to say, I'm going to wear something. It's like the miniature version of people wearing the Jesus fish on their truck around here, which isn't that common, right? Yeah. But I'd love to get us beyond the adoration and idolation of an individual and say, well, what's the values here?
Well, I think there are a lot of people that, yes, there is, like, say Trump is the example, like, a lot of people are idolizing Trump or whatever it may be. But I think there are a certain amount of voters and people that's what they are doing, and that Trump's the end all be all savior. He's not, but it's what he was standing for, at least publicly and outwardly pushing. And I think it's encouraging he's the symbol that we have for all of those things that you and I are talking about. That it's standing up for the little guy. We're against rioting. We're against violence in the streets. We're against all the, forced vaccines or whatever else it may be. I hope you weren't monetizing this video because there went that. My bad.
Oh, no. No.
But so I think it's all of that is said in one when you say, you're pro-Trump or whatever it may be. And so I think that's kind of just the rallying cry, because it's hard to just say to go around with the Republican flag, because that can mean a lot of things. That can mean you're Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger.
There's a lot of people who hold up any banner who have done horrible things. Where I was telling some friends others, I just got married a little bit ago. Thank you. And I was at breakfast the day of my wedding with a bunch of friends that came in from town across a wide variety of political spectrums, from flaming conservative to flaming liberal. And what I said to my friends here on my wedding day, I said, the idea that who you vote for is the most interesting thing about you is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Even the idea that the party of the person you vote for is the most interesting thing about you. No, that's this modern psychosis. It's about as smart as Protestants and Catholics killing each other in Northern Ireland. Right? Like, yes. Oh, you have a slightly or the Sunni and the Shia, right? Oh, you have a different version of who inherits what? Let's kill each other.
Yeah.
That this extremism of I'm going to identify you based on this one thing you did in 2016 or 2020. It's madness. So I want to talk about what your company does. What are some ideas where we go beyond some of the basic political let's go Brandon, whatever things. What are some of the other ideas that you are helping people say in public just by what they're wearing?
Yeah, it's sometimes it might be the cultural thing, like the Let's Go Brandon, that maybe gets someone initially interested in what we're doing. But then it's led to other things that we've done. Like an example would be we've had some videos that have gone pretty viral related to the Declaration of Independence and a couple lines that are in it. And that was interesting because it was funny. Like, a lot of people didn't realize these lines were in the Declaration of Independence, and they were like, wow, this stuff's just amazing. This is great. And it's again in the Declaration of Independence. I would try to quote it for you right now, but I'll screw that up forever and whatever. You can go read the lines yourself, but the
internet is forever. Yes.
Yeah. It brought people to the point of actually reading the Declaration of Independence.
Oh,
and
I don't like
that.
No, if you read the Declaration of Independence, you will have this visceral feeling of, this is not where I live.
I know.
This is not people around me say. And you're like, wait, what happened? This sounds
that's what good. People, that's what people are saying. And you see the comments on these videos and stuff, and they're like, what the hell? Like, I can't believe this. And so it's just interesting that, and again, it's making people look back at what we were founded upon, what our beliefs of freedom were at that time, and what we considered an infringement on those freedoms. And so they look at where they're at now, and they're sitting there talking about whether or not they can go to Walmart without a mask on. And they're like, damn, we have come a long way. I've loved seeing that happen. So I love that, we're getting people fired up and we're having fun with like our Let's Go Brandon shirt, whatever it is. But then when people are actually going and reading the Declaration of Independence, we also have like a canvas with the Constitution on as well. And I've seen some people talking about, well, did you know this was in the yeah. And they can't really read necessarily the cursive writing, and a lot of people now on those. I mean, hell, it's even hard in the Declaration, even if you know cursive. But the video that we did might point out a few lines. And I know there are people out there fact checking us, like, well, this stuff, there's no way the Declaration says this or whatever. So it's been fun to watch that happen and see people get into it. And that's kind of where I like to see that we're actually we're encouraging people through what we're doing to learn more about the founding and freedom in general, just anti-tyranny, pro-liberty is kind of our theme.
I'm looking through your t-shirts right now, and it's pretty incredible. One of the most popular ones just being the simple phrase, "We the people."
Yeah.
But who is we the people? And who is included in that? And how much?
Like, well, I mean, well, here's the sad thing. It's every American, obviously. The first lines of the U.S. Constitution. But now it's become to where if you're just literally pro the U.S. Constitution as it is, it's automatically you're a conservative, you're a Republican. So it's kind of back to what you were talking about earlier, the us versus them and kind of mentality that goes on. But the fact that that's the case with the U.S. Constitution is pretty dumb, but it's the unfortunate reality of where we're at.
So there's a 3-city area that's Olympia. Olympia is one of the cities, and there's Lacey and Tumwater. When you cross the border between the cities, because if you leave Tumwater going into Olympia, all the American flags disappear off the street signs. You go into Lacey, they're all back up.
Yep.
Right? We're next to Fort Lewis, one of the biggest military bases in the country. But you go to Olympia, all the flags almost always are gone.
Well, and that's one thing I've seen from years of working in politics and campaigning. A lot of times I'll go talk. I mean, I've done a lot of it myself back in the day, but I'll go talk to volunteers when they're about to go door to door to houses, promoting a candidate or whatever. And I'll tell them, like, look, if there's a flag at the house, it's out front, it's a Republican. And, people are always a little bit like, I'm like, no, it's going to be a Republican. And you can literally go into a neighborhood, and that's even here in Georgia. And a lot of these races are Metro Atlanta, and you can go around and you can literally go through a neighborhood, and the ones with flags up are Republicans. It's just the way it works.
How are we going to fix this? Because I don't like that answer. And I don't really like the balkanization, descend into 6 different countries answer either. Do you see a path to where we can all come together to a shared narrative again about who we are in a way that it actually includes all the peace-loving Americans who just want their kids to be safe, and actually includes all of us, as opposed to you're flying a flag, obviously you're horrible.
Yeah. Look, there's never going to be a time in history where everyone in a country or nation or city or whatever it may be is all completely in agreement. But I do think we can get closer to that as we begin to ignore the lies from the media and the manipulation from the media. And that includes movies, everything. I watch movies some too. We all do. Music, whatever it may be, and start realizing that, again, there's a lot more of us than them. And it may not be, there's a lot of people out there that they're not as far right or whatever you want, conservative, however you want to label me as I am, but they also don't believe there should be a guy in the girls' shower at their high school. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that's a terrible idea. It's going to lead to really bad things. And I was saying this 2 years ago when they first started talking about it, where now you got kids that are getting raped in high school bathrooms in Virginia. They're then being covered up by the school board. And, you say these things, a lot of people will look at you like you're a conspiracy theorist. Now that one's come out just recently. It's a little more known, but just recently I was telling people about this. Like, wow, that should be on the news. And I'm like, it shouldn't it? And because they're living in a bubble where they never hear or see anything. Just Google Loudoun County for those watching that aren't familiar with it. It'll discuss.
Well, it's very uncomfortable, right, to think about that we have the ideal of equality where everyone is given a fair shake and no one is, attacked for being different. And then we have that ideal, and then there's the reality of you can push things to a place where now we literally have children being raped and the authorities covering it up in Loudoun County, Loudun, I think.
Something like that.
And like, that's the reality now. So I want to emphasize for folks listening to this who are like, Seth's making sense, but also screw Trump, that you can be anti-child rape without being pro-Trump. that we can have this idea of a minimalist rule set, to use John Robb's phrase, the minimalist rule set saying that anything that makes it easier for child abuse is bad. And that doesn't mean you have to be pro any particular politician. We can just all say, yeah, child rape, like that's really horrible. And we can agree on that. And that can be part of what it means to be an American. It's not in the Constitution because it shouldn't have to be. They didn't think to include an amendment, right? Saying actually, having a minimalist rule set. Yeah, I'm wondering where we're going to go from here. That we have where you are, and you're in Georgia, right?
Yes.
So that's a place that's encountered tremendous cultural changes lately. Isn't that where Stacey Abrams is?
Unfortunately, yes, that is correct.
So you have this incredible level of diversity of perspective on what is true. And that's one of these.
You can have perspective. That's the problem, though. You can have all the perspectives about what's true or not, and that's great. But there is typically, in most cases, there's only one thing that's truth. And that's why I've always hated that whole speak your truth or my truth or his truth or her truth or she's whatever it may be. But there's typically only one truth. And I think that's where, people get caught up in that's their truth. Well, no, there's only one truth. And so it's not being partisan to just say, well, I'm going to choose to only believe the truth versus someone else's version of it.
Mm-hmm. Perspective-based truth. It's one of the things that Michael Gimmerin gets into in his sense-making course that I helped him out with is how much do we believe a thing happened because that's what we read about it and we weren't there. So someone else just says, well, this is what happened. So, well, that's probably what happened because that source has been reliable before. Do you remember Lynn Wood, who at one point, Lynn Wood was saying things that were completely true that no one else was talking about. And I thought, man, this guy, he's speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And then at some later point, he was saying crazy talk. And at some point it got to where I thought, this previously apparently reliable source appears to no longer be reliable. And then you go back and look at the thing he said before you noticed he was being unreliable and you go, that was crazy. And you look one thing and you're like, wait a minute, I've been following someone who at one point was speaking the truth and speaking truth to power and being honest and honorable and good. And then there was this transition. Yeah. So Seth, take us into the brain of Seth here. How do you figure out what is true? Beyond just a partisan, let's go, Brandon. I'm on a team, right? Because you're constantly assessing what is true and what is false. Take us into your mind and in the mind of your company about how do you figure out what is actually happening, what is actually true.
Yeah, well, the reality is I'm very jaded because of what I do and what I've done for a living. But everything you read, whether it's a headline from Fox or CNN, whatever that may be, you've got to go break it down and actually read the article, see what it has to say, and then you got to go find the facts for yourself that they use to somehow form this article. And a lot of times when you do that, you dig deep enough, you're going to find out everything's certainly not as it seems from the headlines. And as someone who has worked with the media a lot on covering stories and watching how those things happen, it's gross. It's the best way I could put it. And so sometimes, just working with the media, like they might get the story wrong, and this is, say whatever you want to say about me, but, representing clients and stuff. But if they get it a little bit kind of the story wrong, but it's okay for my candidate, that's the best you can hope for. So the reality is when these stories get done, you would not believe how quick they get thrown together. Okay. You're coming in, the reporter that's covering it might be talking to me for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. They might be talking to someone from the other side for the same amount of time. And they went into this cold, meaning they knew nothing about it. And this might be something that me and the spokesman for another side have been dealing with for the last 2 years. So we know all the little ins and outs of it. They spend 5 minutes from both of us selling our bullshit to them. And they come out and put together a story that has to air that night. And they have to do that. And then they've got like 3 of our stories, like 3 stories like that have to air that night. Do you really think that shit's going to come out mildly accurate by that night? And so we all sit there watching, okay, how's this going to get covered? And sometimes it'll be like, you'll walk away like, I didn't even think of that angle because it's just not near the reality. You got to get deeper and you got to find people that are Glenn Greenwald. And look, I'm here saying Glenn Greenwald, the guy's a liberal. Okay. But for the most part, he does a very fair job of covering things. And the guy digs deep and digs deeper and then digs deeper. And
Yeah.
I love that, and so you got to look at a lot of different sources that are not corporate press.
Yeah, I love Greenwald's stuff, that he's one of the
Yeah.
most honest people who consistently speaks the truth regardless of any team. He's on Team Truth. At least that's what he comes across
Yeah,
to.
he's going to get red pilled. He'll be a conservative eventually, but he won't be able to admit it.
I just don't even know. I don't even know any of those words anymore mean. I just want peace and happiness and everyone to get to take care of their kids. And I want traditional American values that most people want.
Well, you're right. And I'm all for the peace and everyone getting what they want, but it's going to be rough getting there a little bit because we've lost so much ground, and we're not going to gain it back by going around acting like we're going to have to be aggressive to get it back. Let's put it that way. So it's not going to be wearing shirts that say peace and love, that's going to get people to wake up. It's going to require a more, and I'm not talking violence for the idiot that's going to write something later saying that, I was on here doing that. I'm talking about aggressiveness and pushing for the values we want. That means when we get into a legislative position, in 2016, we had the White House, we had both sides of Congress, houses of Congress. We squandered that.
I think
absolutely squandered it. And we could have gotten so much done that would prevented us from being in the situation we're in right now, but we didn't. Screw you, Paul Ryan. And many others.
I think your we is broken, that your we assumes that the Republican Party as an entity has something to do with Americans.
No, I don't. I'm with you on that. I'm saying we as in conservatives that are real conservatives. If you look at my Twitter, you'll find out I'm not a big fan of most Republicans in office right now. And even the ones that you think are great, man, they're just fighting the cause. Like they're going to go on Sean Hannity and, Lindsey Graham's going to talk about fighting for we the people, and Jim Jordan. That's going to piss some people off because Jim's a real fighter. Jim hasn't done shit. He's taken a shitload of money from Google, which is why he continues to protect them, which is why you can't Google and learn the facts about a lot of things, which is why you should use DuckDuckGo when you can. So the reality is all those great hardcore proven conservatives, you get the mailers in the mail, they have money to send you all that shit and put that on your TV nonstop from all the corporate interests that are paying for them. And the problem is people will buy that. Even
Are you following Joe Kent?
I am actually, and I'm loving that.
So I live one county away from getting to be in his district.
Oh man, nice. Very good.
I got to shake his hand at a campaign event at a medical freedom rally at the Capitol.
Love it.
It seems like a very solid guy.
Yes.
And does not seem to be bought. He's not a politician, right?
Yeah. I built my reputation on it with him.
Yeah. He's a warrior. And who's like, this is disgusting. And so decided to do something even less tasteful than killing people, which is being in politics. Right? Yeah, I like that guy. I want to go back to this aggressive thing, though. Information aggression. That's what we're talking about. That instead of an information neutral thing, we could describe as, I'm just going to go be beige so that I don't get hassled and I stay safe. Reputationally safe, like even doing this live stream. We're streaming to LinkedIn right now. I have a huge number of liberal friends, people who love, and I'm here saying, don't identify with your political party. It's a trap, right? Yeah. America first values of peace, justice, safety for all. Like these are our values, not some political party. But we're streaming to LinkedIn, so who knows? Reputationally risky, right? Because so many of us think, well, I'm just going to be beige. It's not my job. It's not my place to talk about some of these things. So for someone who identifies that idea of, I am informationally beige, what's a first step? Maybe not a let's go Brandon shirt, or maybe that is a first step to saying, I'm going to go exert 2% more influence on the culture around me to go reflect my values a little bit more than I am, and just take that first step. What in your experience has been the gateway drug to people being more risky and more willing to go speak up just a little bit and at least say, I'm here?
It's funny. I mean, it's everything. A lot of times the humor stuff is where people will find, they'll start out doing something for the humor of it. And so, they might wear something that has something funny about it. The other side, it's just, someone might start wearing a "Don't Tread on Me" hat or shirt, and they'll notice the people that recognize it come up and speak to them about it. And it'll be people in places you would never expect it. And that will encourage that person. They'll say, wow, there really are a lot of people out here that have a lot of these beliefs and don't believe the government should be treading on us in this case. And so I think that encourages them to maybe become a little more bold, and to the point they'll learn more, and to a point where they can learn enough to where when someone comes up and asks them about their Let's Go Brandon shirt or whatever it may be, they're informed enough to talk to that person. But again, you'll wear this stuff out and it will shock you with the amount of people that agree with you. But the problem is most people don't vote in general, like, your city council elections. No one votes in city council election. Your state house, your state senate, your school board. Now, school board, people might start paying attention to that again. Yeah. And I know I have not paid attention enough as someone who works in politics, because there's no money in running a school board campaign. Shame on me. There we go. But I have a family to feed. But nonetheless, I will be donating time to school board elections in the future. I can tell you that. And so I think that it will encourage people to pay attention to those things further. But when you go out and you wear some of these shirts with slogans, sayings, whatever, you get out there, and when people start coming up to you and you realize all these people you would have never thought, they won't look like you. That's the ones that always surprises people. When people are coming up to you that might look like a hippie, or they look like a skateboard punk, or their nationality is, say they're black, which overwhelmingly have always voted Democrat, and they're coming up saying, man, I really like your shirt. And you're looking around, you're like, well, you are a statistical anomaly. But they're not as much as we think. Maybe they don't vote as much.
They're not anomaly to them, right? They're individuals like the rest of us,
right?
And we're just putting our own ideas we got from the media about who someone should be. I was at this medical freedom rally at the Capitol, biggest rally I've ever seen there. Wow. And here up comes and walks a small Asian woman in yoga pants, and she's at a medical freedom rally, so we probably have somewhat similar ideals about bodily autonomy. Besides that, there's no obvious connection. And then I see that she's sort of concealed carrying a handgun on holster in her yoga pants. And I think, it's my people. And then she has her jacket partway over it. And I say, oh, hey, just so you know, they recently passed a law saying that open carry is illegal at political rallies, which this is. So consider zipping your jacket up because you're committing a crime right now. And the cops might arrest you for it. And she says, what? But I got to educate her a little bit. And she and went on her way. I'm like, okay, this is my people, right? But just looking at her until I saw the handgun, how would I know that that's my people? So we have all these assumptions about who we are, all these identity things. When the reality is there's people like us. Yeah. That's sort of the American idea, right? That we're not a skin color. We're not a religion, that we're a cultural unity, not a ethnic unity.
Yep.
And so the idea of just wear a hat, just wear one thing. It's so huge.
You're going to embolden people around you. You really will. And just, actions. And, this is, a lot of people, this is not always an easiest stance to take, especially maybe you're a woman, you've got children with you at the time, whatever it may be. But even here in Georgia, when it got to the point when all the stores were pushing the whole, you had to wear masks to be in Kroger, Publix, whatever it may be. And at first I was like, you know what? It's a business. It's their right to do what they want to do. If that's what they want, they're required. But then I got to the point where we've lost so much freedom. I really don't care about it anymore. If it's a large corporate business, if it's a small mom and pop and they say, hey, we want you to wear masks, I just won't shop there. But if it's Walmart, Kroger, Publix, whatever it may be, I'm looking at that. They're corporate. Those companies are so big. They're an arm of the government now, which is kind of how fascism works. And so I got to the point where I'm not going to wear a mask in there. I'm going to go shop, and it's created some interesting situations for sure. But what it does do is it emboldens others looking around that are watching, whatever insanity might be taking place with me when people are going nuts. They're quietly sitting back and watching, saying, you know what, this guy's going to walk out of here alive and with his groceries. Maybe I could do the same thing too. And, it was funny. I walked out of, it was Staples. This is a few months back when they had a mask thing. I went in Staples, got what I needed. A couple nuts rushed across a nearly empty store to get up in my face about it. And I'm like, well, if you're so afraid, you should go back to what you're doing. And as I'm leaving the store, a mom and a son, and probably close to an adult age son, are walking in, and they're like, oh God, we got to put on, oh God, we forgot our mask. She's looking at the sign on the door. And I'm walking out without mine. And I hear her say that to her son. And she's like, we got to go back to the car. And I said, so we got to go back to our car to put our mask on. And I was walking by, I was like, shut up. And so I said, or you could just not pretend you did. And I just kind of walked on, and they kind of looked at each other for a minute, and I couldn't hear what they were saying with each other. And they were kind of like nod, and they just walked in the store. So you never know what little thing will actually influence others to embolden them. They were about to comply, go back to, getting the mask and all this. And look, if the mask, that if we want to talk about masks, we can talk about masks, but that's just an example, I guess, of the little things you can do that will embolden someone around you.
I like the idea of emboldening, that it's not. So I used to be more of a philosopher, but I didn't know how to fight at all. And then somewhere in college, I came across George Washington's words that guns are liberty's teeth. And I was confronted with the unpleasant fact that I was a wimp. And I ended up dealing with that by learning how to shoot and being a sword fighter for a decade. So now I'm less of a wimp than I was. And when you say embolden, what comes to mind is that it's not enough to accurately perceive the truth. That if you accurately perceive the truth, but you're not sharing it with people and you're not living as an example, then that doesn't create a healthy population. That we need to be sharing with each other what our values are. And values like bodily autonomy matters. I don't have a right to force things in your body. You don't have a right to force things in my body. That value, that's not a political stance. That's not a pro-politician stance of what any kind. That's a human value. It's a human right. And so when you don't wear a mask, or you wear a shirt that says something about not wearing masks or not mandates or whatever, you're evangelizing human rights in a way that a lot of people are very afraid, and some of them for good reason, because they're under attack from their jobs or whatever else.
Right.
So you're emboldening other people by sharing just what human rights are, and be like, oh, right, that is what to be human is I don't have to go muzzle myself to walk into a store. Exactly. Oh, right, I get to choose my own medical interventions. Oh, right, now I remember. What is your favorite piece of apparel that you sell? So if someone's thinking, this sounds fun, but oh God, there's so many different t-shirts, hats, whatever else. What's one thing for people who want to start showing their values on their body in some way and change the culture a little bit, embolden some people? What's one thing on your website they can go look at?
The thing I probably had the most fun with is we have a Fauci lied shirt. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
And just the amount of conversation that has brings up when you wear it out is pretty entertaining. I've worn it in a lot of situations, a lot of places with all kinds of different audience and groups of people. So it's always entertaining. It's gotten to the point where now, like with my kids, like we'll start to leave and I've got a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I'll be wearing a shirt that says whatever. And it'll sometimes get to the point where if they know we're going somewhere that's crowded or, busy place, where they're like, Dad, don't wear that. And it's not that people are coming up hating on us or whatever it may be. It takes time away from them because people are coming up wanting to get photos of the shirt and wanting to talk to you. And it's, taken away from my time with the kids. And so I do understand that. So that's how much of like when you go to crowded places wearing these kind of shirts, that's how much you end up engaging with others, which I actually think is great, with the exception of taking away from the time with your kids. So I think about that now. But it's great that we're actually engaging and talking with other people when we're going places. We're not these little drones walking around down follow this line, this direction, you COVID sheep this way, and, get your groceries and go, don't talk to anyone. It's taking us away from that to actually making, more of a community thing where you go somewhere and you actually communicate with someone. That
community that you're talking about, being in community and being responsible for the information hygiene of your community. That if you let 99% of the information in your community come from somewhere else and let that control your community, and then suppress the voices of people in the community and suppress their values, that it doesn't matter what community we're talking about, that is never going to be healthy. There needs to be some balance of, we're going to listen to some outsider people, give us their thoughts, and we're going to look at what our values are. We're going to talk amongst ourselves about our values. So we have here on the screen, bringmo.com, the Fauci Light t-shirt. I'm looking at it. Nice and simple. I love it beautifully. And then, Seth, if folks want to learn more about you, the place to go is your Twitter there, Seth Weathers. Thank you so much for being on Red Bearded Live and sharing with us thoughts about culture.
I love being here, and I hope this does not get you canceled, because it seems like you're doing a lot of great work, sharing a lot of interesting things about culture, business, and got a lot of good stuff with what you're covering, and I like it. So
that's wonderful. The whole cancel conversation is a different one, which we'll have again soon. Take care, folks.
Definitely. Have a great one.